Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be doing a review of The Invisible Man. Now, since a lot of movies are getting dumped onto streaming because of the coronavirus, I'm going to be doing a series of reviews that's going to be coming up of some big stuff that's on streaming. So the first one was Invisible Man. I also plan on doing Bloodshot, Tiger King, and probably a few more a little ways down the road when more of them start getting released. Um, but going to The Invisible Man. Now, The Invisible Man stars Elizabeth Moss as a character called Cecilia. And basically, before I get into the film, obviously this is going to contain spoilers, but I'm just going to try and go over every facet of the film and kind of grade it a little bit, and basically at the end just give you my final thoughts. Um, Now, as far as the directing goes, the directing is not terrible for what the film is. Now, what the film is dumb, but at least it's well directed dumb, if that makes any sense to people. Um, now, when I say it's directed stupid, it's it's one of those things that when you can tell that somebody's putting effort into something, but in reality, it's very dumb. Like Elizabeth Moss does a fairly good job at portraying, I guess, an abuse victim would be the best way to go about it, even though a lot of the stuff she does is concurrent with, I guess, a lot of other mental disorders like OCD and paranoia and stuff like that. But the thing is that she's the central point of the story. So when you look at that, if the central point of the story is weak in terms of the way that it comes off, not obviously physically weak, but in terms of the performance and the way that it kind of comes across to the audience, then your film is not going to do well. So she actually does a decent job, even though she does a lot of dumb things during this film. Um, for instance, at the very beginning of the film, basically the whole idea is that this guy named Adrian is, and I can't remember the actor who plays him because he's only really in the movie for like 5 minutes. Um, he is her boyfriend, but he's also a brilliant optical engineer, and because of that, he somehow has created some things that I'll go into the invisibility stuff later, but basically he's a brilliant optical engineer, but in reality he is the most controlling, psychotic boyfriend ever. Um, and like I said, the first 10 minutes of the movie is her doing all of this insane shit to sneak out of his house and get away. And it's the dumbest 10 minutes you will see because I shouldn't say that, the dumbest probably 8.5 minutes you'll see. Because the first bit is her going to get like her personal items like her social security card and her passport and so her money and stuff like that. Like, okay, that makes sense to try and get that if you're going to leave the guy. But then she has this whole thing where she's like turning a camera towards him and she's turning off all the security cameras and she's watching him on her cell phone and stuff like that. Like, just put on some shoes, grab a bag of clothes, and get the fuck out of the house. It's not that difficult. It didn't take 10 minutes, and she fucks it up anyway, which is even more hilarious. Um, but again, it's one of those scenes, and then on top of that, the guy has like he lives in a compound. Like this isn't even like a Hollywood house. This is a compound. It has cement walls that encircle it, and I think it's on the ocean, if I remember correctly. Um, yeah, because at the beginning of it, they okay. Also, the opening credits look horrible. You can barely read them because it's supposed to be like a water splashing up, and the credits are supposed to be invisible because they're supposed to be on the shoreline behind the house. So when they splash up, the water kind of drips off the credits, but you can barely read them. I'm sure it probably actually looked better. It would have looked better if it was actually on a film screen because if it was bigger, it would have worked. But on a smaller screen, because I watched it on my television, you can barely read it. But as far as that goes, the actor who plays Adrian, even though he's only in the movie for 5 minutes, he doesn't do a terrible job. Um, And that kind of covered. I think that covers that, and that covers the directing. Now, again, the directing is kind of it's weird. It's kind of stupid. They don't the writing is horrible. I will say that the writing in this film is fucking horrible. Not only for that first 10-minute scene there, but also because later on they don't explain anything. Really, they explain stuff I think in passing lines, but they don't do it until well after the fact. Like Elizabeth Moss has escaped from his house, and she's basically been put up in this home, and we don't know who the guy is that owns the home. He's this big, jacked up black guy, and he has a daughter, and we don't know really anything about that. The mom apparently is not in the picture, and apparently Elizabeth Moss is not sleeping with him, which is also another kind of weird thing. But he owns this house that she is living in. Her sister put her up there because her sister's the one that actually picked her up, and we don't know that's her sister until like two scenes later, when they state that your sister's coming over and it's the same woman. And of course, then we have the plot twist of, oh, hey, your ex boyfriend, he killed himself because he couldn't have you. And then we go through the basic explanation of what he did and all this stuff, and all the crap that he put her through and all that stuff. So basically, this movie has devolved into domestic abuse, the film, as opposed to an Invisible Man remake. And now here's the thing: the original Invisible Man. I'm not going to talk anything about the '80s one. The original Invisible Man from 1933, which was directed by James Whale, is it's a classic, and it works, and it's based off the H.G. Wells book. This is not based off the H.G. Wells book. And again, the writing in it is dumb. There's portions of it and scenes of it where a lot of it doesn't make sense. Like I said, even though the big black dude that she's living with, we don't find out until probably about 15 minutes later that he's a cop. And the thing that kind of bugged me about it was like the first scene where you have him, you could have just had him walk in the house and have his badge or something on his belt, and that's what you see, and then he's a cop, and you get it. They don't have that scene until 15 minutes later. And he mentions he's a cop literally in passing when they're all kind of having a fun little like wrestle in the house for whatever reason. There's also a weird joke involving a ladder, which is not very funny. It's just kind of strange and awkward. And I get it that Elizabeth Moss is supposed to be, this awkward, socially awkward person. But basically, after that, we find out that, or you can probably guess that the Invisible Man, or Adrian, her ex-boyfriend, who has developed some way to become invisible, is tormenting her. And that is literally the crux of the film. The crux of the film is this guy is trying to ruin this woman's life because he wants her to be so miserable that she'll come back to him in order to have a baby. None of this makes any fucking sense because this guy is a multi-billionaire, from what we can tell. He has a lot of money. And I'm not sure how much of it is, she's supposed to get like $5 million, because that's the entire thing of the film, is that in order to get the money, she has to prove that she is mentally competent and hasn't committed any crimes and yada yada yada. And basically that's his whole thing, is she wants to get this money, and now he's torturing the living shit out of her so that she can't get the money, and the only way she can get the money is to go back with him. And again, the writing for this is it's very I don't want to say Blumhousey, because Blumhouse kind of has different levels of crap, but it's not good. Now moving down to some of the other stuff, the fight scenes in it, and the actual effects. Now the fight scenes aren't bad. There's only a couple. There's a few where he's fighting some security guards at like a mental institution. There's a few where he's doing some other stuff. He's throwing her around the room. Some of those aren't terrible. But here's the thing: you can tell where this budget went. This budget went for the actors, and that was probably about it. This thing was made for $7 million, from what I remember. Um, and the CGI in this reflects that, because the CGI is god awful. Because we find out in the end of the movie, and also, by the way, spoilers, that he's not actually physically invisible. And the reason why he's not physically invisible is because he's actually wearing a suit that somehow masks his presence, and turns him invisible. So he has control over it, which again subverts all of the stuff from the original story, because the whole original story is he's stuck invisible. Even when they did the remake there, and I don't remember too much about the '80s one, but when they did the remake with Kevin Bacon with Hollow Man, they still had that element in there where he didn't know how to go back to being visible. And the drug that was in his system was screwing with his brain. So that was actually a lot more faithful to the original story. In this, he's just nuts. And he's just wearing a suit. And apparently the suit also modifies your strength, which I think is kind of strange. And they don't really mention that much in the film, at least from what I remember. Um, because it shows him, like, he just throws Elizabeth Moss around this room, and he picks her up by her neck and starts choking her. And then there's a scene later on where he's in the suit, and he's beating the living hell out of the jacked up black guy. And the jacked up black guy is like twice the size, or I shouldn't say twice the size, but he's definitely bigger than the guy who's playing Adrian, and the guy who's playing Adrian's brother. Because hey, there's another plot twist: the brother's in on it too, and there's two suits. Because you had to have that being in the thing. But the other thing is the death scenes in the film. So there's two death scenes in the film. There's one involving Elizabeth Moss's sister, and there's one involving Adrian, the Invisible Man himself. And I'm not going to count the brother, because the brother just gets shot and it's whatever. But both of those scenes are almost identical. And basically all it is somebody is in the invisible suit. In the first scene, we presume it's either Adrian or his brother. And in the second scene, it's Elizabeth Moss, because she's hidden the suit inside the house, and she's going to meet him after she realizes that he's not dead. And after he's revealed himself. And again, there's a whole plot twist at the end where they try to pin it on the brother, who somehow got his hands on the suit, and he kidnapped him and locked him in a basement and handcuffed him to a toilet or something. And at the end of the film, she kills him with a knife, just like he killed her sister with a knife, and it's supposed to be this great kind of comeback moment. And in reality, it's just kind of the ending to a shitty film. And like I said, the CGI is god awful. There's a CGI table in one scene that's like, why did you need a CGI table for this? You couldn't have found a way using practical effects to just flip a table over. And for whatever reason, they decided to go with the CGI table. And then the CGI when he's in the suit, because for whatever reason, again, they had some kind of a suit. And even though the workings of it, I feel like you could have done with CGI, like the guy in the suit, you probably could have just had a normal guy and had him wear like a green suit. If you wanted it to be like partially invisible or something like that, you could just have part of it, kind of blink in and out and stuff like that. Because that's the whole thing is, like, at one point she manages to damage the suit, and so he's kind of blinking in and out of existence, which would be a really cool effect if the CGI wasn't so bad. But like I said, the movie is a far cry from the original. You can tell it was made for a low budget, and I think it should have had more practical effects in it to cover that up, because the CGI was not very good, or they should have put a little bit more money into the CGI. And it's just one of those movies that's not that great. I would give it probably a 1 out of 5. I do really like the original too, so the fact that it kind of went away from that to such an extreme degree, and to a dumb degree, is not very, very good to me. I think here's the thing about remakes: if you're going to go in an original angle, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but it should be done in a good way in terms of entertainment. This movie was not, and it's marketed as a thriller. It really isn't. And the other thing is that most of this movie does not use music. And this was pointed out to me because I watched this movie with Vash and Purity. This was pointed out to me. The movie doesn't use music in most scenes. In a lot of scenes, it's just ambient noise and nothing else. It's just, okay, I'm walking around, and then you have a little noise like she touches something, or she's walking, or footsteps, or maybe some breathing, or something like that. But most of it doesn't have music, and the parts that do have music sound like they're ripping off very, very much from Inception. It's like that big whoa, it's like that big bass moment that you hear in that movie. It's exactly the same. It feels like they almost ripped it from Inception. I'm not sure who did the score for this, but that's not very good either. If you had had good music to this, you might have been able to get some more tension out of it. Um, the thing I can equate it to is like if you had if you had like a scene from Jaws with a shark swimming around and you didn't have any music to it. It's like you just see like the shark swimming around and then something happens. It's like it's not as scary. The same thing with this. There's nothing going on, and I get the idea that they're trying to make you kind of relax you when there's no sound and nothing happens. But the thing is at the end of that, something has to happen. You can't just have it be where you see his breath and then they cut to something else, something like that. You can't just have that. It doesn't work in terms of a suspense thing. And I get that you're going to have red herrings and stuff like that in films, but again, you should have probably had a better musical score. But that's my final opinion on this. 1 out of 5 stars. It's not that good. The original is far superior. The Kevin Bacon one is actually superior to this, which is actually kind of sad for me to say, but that's my opinion. I want to know what yours is. Have you seen this new Invisible Man? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you a fan of the original? Are you a fan of the 80s one or the Hollow Man, the Kevin Bacon one? Again, put your thoughts in the comments below. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?